Hey, tonight we're going to journey back in time to ancient America, long before Columbus arrived in 1492. I'm going to take you to a world where survival depended on understanding the land, where people lived alongside nature in ways both challenging and beautiful. You'll experience what it was like to wake up in a world without horses or cattle, where corn and potatoes fed entire civilizations, and where fire was both friend and tool. Hey, if you're enjoying these stories, I'd really appreciate a like or subscribe. I'm curious where you're listening from, so drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Now, find a cozy spot, take a slow, deep breath, and let your body sink into comfort as we journey back in time together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in ancient America around the year 1150. The air smells different here, cleaner, but filled with wood smoke and the earthy scent of the forest floor. You find yourself near the mighty Mississippi River, where three great waterways merge together. The Missouri, Illinois, and Mississippi rivers. This is one of the most fertile places in all of North America and home to one of the largest Native American settlements on the continent. As your eyes adjust to the early morning light filtering through the trees, you feel the soft animal hide beneath you. It's warm, but not as soft as the mattress you're used to. The slight roughness against your skin reminds you that everything here was once alive. The bed, the clothing, the walls of the shelter around you. You're in Cahokia, the greatest city of the Mississippian culture, a vast urban center with towering earthen mounds and thousands of people. You sit up and stretch, feeling the coolness of the morning air against your face. Your muscles ache slightly from yesterday's work, a pleasant reminder of a body well used. Outside, you hear voices, the crackling of morning fires and the sounds of a community waking up. Children laugh somewhere nearby, and the smell of food being prepared makes your stomach growl. Good news, you've arrived in summer when food is plentiful. Bad news, you'll need to learn how to contribute to the community quickly, or you won't be welcome for long. You step outside your dwelling and are immediately struck by the sight of the great central plaza of Cahokia. Rising before you is a massive earthen structure over 100 feet tall, taller than a 10-story building. They call it Monk's Mound, though that name will come much later. It's the largest earthen structure in the Americas, containing more than 22 million cubic feet of soil that was carried here basket by basket without the help of wheels or beasts of burden. On top sits the chief's house overlooking the entire city. Around you, hundreds of thatched roof houses spread out in a carefully planned grid. You know what? It's actually a lot like a modern suburb in some ways, except instead of lawns, people have garden plots where they grow beans, squash and sunflowers. And instead of concrete, the pathways are packed earth, worn smooth by thousands of bare feet and moccasins. The morning air is thick and humid, clinging to your skin like a warm, damp cloth. You can already tell it's going to be a hot day. You reach up to wipe the sweat from your forehead and realize you're wearing different clothing now. A simple garment made of woven plant fibers, perfect for the summer heat. A woman approaches you, her dark hair hanging in two long braids. She wears a similar garment to yours, but adorned with small shells that make a gentle clicking sound as she walks. Her feet are bare, toughened by years of walking on the earth. She doesn't smile, but her eyes are kind as she gestures for you to follow her. "You must be hungry," she says in a language you somehow understand. "Come eat, then there is work to do." You follow her to a communal cooking area where several women are tending to clay pots nestled in the coals of a fire. The scent of corn porridge fills the air, mixed with something unfamiliar, a rich, earthy smell that makes your mouth water. "Sit," she says, pointing to a woven mat on the ground. She hands you a wooden bowl filled with a thick porridge. It's corn, but not like any corn you've ever tasted before. It's been processed with wood ash, which releases nutrients and gives it a distinctive flavour. Slightly bitter, but hearty and filling. Floating in the porridge are bits of what might be dried berries and nuts. As you eat, you notice something interesting about the bowl in your hands. It's beautifully crafted, with intricate patterns etched into the wood. You run your fingers along the designs, geometric shapes that might tell a story you don't yet understand. The craftsmanship is remarkable, especially considering it was made without metal tools. Good? The woman asks, watching you eat. You nod, your mouth full. The food is strange but satisfying, and you realize how hungry you've been. As you finish, she takes the bowl from you and points toward the central plaza. Today, you will learn to work with corn, she says. We must prepare for the winter months. You follow her to a field just outside the main settlement. Here, tall green stalks of corn stretch as far as you can see. Women and older children move through the rows, tending to the plants with wooden tools. Some pull weeds, others check the growing ears of corn. The woman hands you a digging stick, a simple tool made from a hardwood branch, fire-hardened to a point at one end. This is how we plant, she explains, demonstrating how to make a small hole in the soft earth. The three sisters grow together, corn, beans, and squash. The corn grows tall, the beans climb the corn and put good things in the soil, and the squash spreads along the ground to keep weeds away. You try your hand at the work, and immediately your back begins to ache. Without metal hoes or ploughs, farming is labour-intensive. You have to bend close to the ground, making hole after hole with your digging stick. The sun beats down on your neck and shoulders, and sweat trickles down your spine. Your hands, unused to such work, quickly develop painful blisters. Yet there's something deeply satisfying about it too. You're connected to the earth in a way you've never experienced before. You notice things you might have missed, the different textures of soil between your fingers, the subtle movements of insects among the plants, the way the corn seems to sigh and rustle in the slight breeze. As you work, the woman teaches you about the corn. This isn't like modern corn with its uniform yellow kernels. This corn comes in many colours: blue, red, white, yellow, and combinations of all these. Each type has a different purpose. Some for immediate eating, some for grinding into meal, some for storing through the winter. Corn is our mother, she explains as she skillfully moves through the field. Long ago, our ancestors found a wild grass, and over many generations, they changed it into what you see now. Without corn, we could not live in this place as we do. Without corn, we would have to always move, following the herds like our ancestors did. You begin to understand that corn isn't just food here, it's the foundation of their civilization. It allows them to stay in one place, to build permanent structures, to develop art and religion and political systems. It gives them the time and energy to construct massive earthworks like the mounds of Cahokia. By midday, the heat is almost unbearable. Your shirt clings to your back, soaked with sweat. Your hands throb and your lower back sends sharp pains up your spine. Just as you think you can't continue, a bell-like sound rings out across the field. Everyone stops working and heads toward the shade of nearby trees. Under the broad branches, older children distribute water in clay vessels. It tastes earthy and slightly warm, but it's wonderfully refreshing. You're given a piece of dried meat, deer, you think, that's tough but flavourful, and a handful of berries that burst with sweetness in your mouth. As you rest in the shade, letting your tired muscles relax, you observe the people around you. They chat and laugh together. Children play a game with small carved pieces, and two older men work on crafting new tools. Despite the hard labour, there's a sense of community here that feels both foreign and familiar. The woman who's been guiding you sits nearby, weaving something from plant fibres. Her fingers move with practiced ease, turning simple materials into what looks like a small basket. "What is your name?" you ask, realizing you don't know what to call her. She looks up, seeming surprised by the question. "I am Talisa," she says after a moment. "It means water song in our language." "And what do you call this place?" you ask, gesturing to the settlement spread out below the hill where you're sitting. Talisa considers this. "We call it the Great City by the Water," she says, "though our people have many names. We are the people of the earth mounds, the followers of the river, the children of corn." She seems amused by your questions. "Are you a chief's son?" she asks suddenly. You ask many questions, but know little about working the land. You hesitate, unsure how to explain your situation. "I'm from far away," you say finally. "Where I come from, things are different." Talisa nods, accepting this vague explanation. Then you have much to learn if you wish to survive here. The rest period ends too quickly, and you're back in the fields for the afternoon. By the time the sun begins to lower in the sky, your entire body aches with a deep fatigue, unlike anything you've experienced before. Modern life, with all its conveniences, has not prepared you for this kind of physical labour. As the workday ends, people gather in the central plaza. Large cooking fires have been built, and the evening meal is being prepared. The savoury smell of stewing meat fills the air, mixed with the smoke from the fires. Children run and play while adults sit in groups, talking and working on various crafts. You notice that the women are in charge of cooking and processing the harvested corn, while men return from hunting expeditions carrying deer and smaller game. Everyone seems to have a role, a contribution to the community. Talisa introduces you to her family. A husband who's a skilled hunter, 2 young children, and an older mother who specializes in pottery making. They welcome you to their fire, where a clay pot bubbles with a stew of venison, corn, and wild greens. The meal is simple but satisfying. You eat from a wooden bowl using your fingers, the warm stew soothing your tired body. As darkness falls, elders begin to tell stories around the larger central fires. Their voices rise and fall in rhythmic patterns, sometimes speaking, sometimes singing. Though you can't understand all the words, you grasp that they're recounting the history of their people, the origins of the world, the proper ways to live. As you listen, your eyelids grow heavy. The physical exhaustion of the day catches up with you, and the gentle voice of the storyteller lulls you towards sleep. Talisa shows you to a sleeping mat in her family's dwelling, a simple but effective shelter made of wooden poles covered with woven mats and earth. Lying there in the darkness, hearing the soft breathing of the family around you and the distant sounds of the settlement settling down for the night, you reflect on what you've learned today. Life here is harder in many ways, physically demanding with none of the comforts you're used to. Yet there's also a directness to it, a clear connection between work and survival, between people and the land they inhabit. Your muscles ache with a satisfying tiredness. Your hands, though blistered, have accomplished real work today. Your stomach is full of food that came directly from the earth around you. There's a simplicity to this existence that has its own kind of comfort. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder what tomorrow will bring in this ancient American world. The stars shine through a small opening in the roof, brighter and more numerous than you've ever seen them before. No electric lights compete with their brilliance here. In the distance, a night bird calls, its voice echoing across the sleeping city. The sound follows you down into your dreams, where corn grows tall as trees and great earthen mounds touch the sky. The last thing you feel before sleep takes you completely is the steady, solid earth beneath you, the same earth that provides the corn, supports the mounds, and cradles this entire civilization in its fertile embrace. You are a part of it now, connected to this ancient place in ways you're only beginning to understand. Sleep comes easily, deep and dreamless, as your body prepares for another day in ancient America, a world both harsh and beautiful, challenging and rewarding, a world where survival depends on community, knowledge, and a deep understanding of the land that provides everything needed for life. You wake to the sound of movement in the dwelling. Opening your eyes, you see Talisa's family already up and preparing for the day. Your body protests as you sit up. Yesterday's fieldwork has left your muscles sore in ways you've never experienced before. Your palms, unaccustomed to the rough wooden tools, are raw and tender. When Talisa's husband notices you wincing as you flex your hands, he nods with understanding. "The first days are always the hardest," he says, his voice deep and resonant. "I am Kitchi. Today you will come with the hunters. Your hands need time to toughen. Relief washes over you. A different kind of work might give your blistered palms a chance to heal." But as you soon discover, hunting comes with its own challenges. After a quick breakfast of cold corn porridge and dried berries, you follow Kitchi and a group of 6 other men to the edge of the settlement. Each carries a bow made of carefully shaped wood with arrows tipped with flint points. Kitchi hands you a spare bow and a leather pouch containing several arrows. "Have you hunted before?" he asks, studying your face. You hesitate, not wanting to admit your complete inexperience. "Not like you do," you say finally. Kitchi nods, seeming to understand more than you've said. "Watch first, learn, stay quiet." The hunting party moves into the forest with a silence that amazes you. These men seem to float across the ground, placing each foot with deliberate care to avoid snapping twigs or rustling leaves. You try to imitate them, but your movements feel clumsy and loud in comparison. Every few minutes, one of the hunters glances back at you with a mixture of amusement and concern. The morning air is cool beneath the forest canopy, a welcome relief from yesterday's heat in the open fields. Sunlight filters through the leaves in dappled patterns, creating a cathedral-like atmosphere. Birds call from the branches above, and occasionally small animals rustle in the underbrush. After walking for what feels like several miles, Kitchi signals for the group to stop. He points ahead to a small clearing where several deer are grazing. The animals are no more than 50 yards away, their ears flicking occasionally to catch sounds, their tails twitching at insects. The hunters spread out silently, taking positions around the clearing. Kitchi motions for you to stay behind a large oak tree, indicating with hand gestures that you should remain absolutely still. Your heart pounds so loudly you worry the deer might hear it. You watch as the hunters prepare their bows with fluid, practiced movements. The anticipation is almost unbearable. The absolute silence, the focused intensity of the men, the unsuspecting deer continuing their peaceful grazing. When the first arrow flies, it happens so quickly you almost miss it. A soft twang of the bowstring, a whisper of air, and suddenly a deer buckles, an arrow protruding from behind its shoulder. The other deer freeze for a split second, then bound away, but not before 2 more arrows find their marks. 3 deer fall, while the rest of the herd disappears into the forest. The successful hunters let out soft whoops of satisfaction, while the others nod in respect. There's no disappointment among those who didn't make a kill. This is clearly a communal effort, not a competition. Kitchi approaches one of the fallen deer, a young buck with small antlers. He kneels beside it, places his hand on its flank, and speaks quiet words you can't quite hear. When he looks up at you, his expression is solemn. "We thank the deer for giving its life so that our people may live," he explains. "We honor its spirit by using everything it gives us: meat for food, hide for clothing and shelter, bones for tools, sinew for bowstrings." You watch as the hunters begin the process of field dressing the deer. Their movements are efficient and respectful, wasting nothing. They use stone knives with edges sharper than you would have thought possible without metal. Blood warms your hands as you help hold the deer's legs, and you're surprised by how little the sight bothers you. Here, there's no separation between the meat you eat and the animal it comes from. The connection is immediate and undeniable. Once the deer are prepared for transport, the men fashion carrying poles from young saplings. The deer are suspended from these poles, making it possible for pairs of hunters to carry them back to the settlement. You're assigned to help carry one of the smaller deer, and the weight of it surprises you. By the time you've walked half a mile, your shoulders burn with the effort. "Tomorrow," Kitchi says, noticing your struggle, "we will hunt differently. Today we hunted in the forest. Tomorrow we hunt on the prairie." Back at the settlement, the successful hunt is greeted with appreciation. Women come to take the deer, already discussing how they'll be prepared and distributed. You notice that nothing is wasted. Even the blood has been carefully collected in containers made from animal bladders. After cleaning up at a small stream that runs near the settlement, you join Kitchi's family for the midday meal. The conversation turns to tomorrow's hunt, which seems to hold special significance. "We will burn the prairie tomorrow," Kitchi explains, seeing your curious expression. "The old grasses are dry now. Burning them makes way for new growth that will bring the bison closer to our hunting grounds." "The bison are more dangerous than deer," adds an older hunter named Nahali, who has joined your group. "They can kill a man with their horns or trample him beneath their hooves, but one bison provides as much meat as many deer, and their hides make the best winter robes." That night, as you lie on your sleeping mat, you find yourself both anxious and excited about the next day's hunt. The deer hunting was challenging enough. How much more difficult would it be to take down an animal as large and powerful as a bison? And what would it be like to deliberately set fire to the landscape? The concept seems both terrifying and fascinating. Sleep comes more easily tonight, your body adapting to its new rhythms. Your dreams are filled with running deer and flickering flames. Morning arrives with a palpable sense of anticipation throughout the settlement. Today's hunt requires more preparation, and many people are involved. Women prepare extra water containers and food for the hunters, who might be gone overnight. Children help gather specific herbs that will be used in pre-hunt rituals. Elders offer advice and blessings to the hunting party. You join a larger group this time, 15 men, each carrying not only bows and arrows but also spears with stone points. Some carry small clay pots containing glowing embers, carefully tended to preserve the fire from the community hearth. Before departing, the hunters gather in a circle. An elder steps forward, his face painted with red and black designs. He carries a pipe, elaborately carved and decorated with feathers. After lighting the pipe with an ember from one of the fire pots, he offers it to the 4 directions: east, south, west, north, before passing it around the circle. Each hunter takes a ceremonial puff. When the pipe reaches you, Kitchi whispers instructions. Draw the smoke in lightly, then hold it in your mouth before releasing it. As you do, think of the bison, thank them for sustaining our people. The smoke has an unfamiliar herbal taste, not unpleasant but strong. As you exhale, you feel a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a deepening of the sense of purpose that surrounds this hunt. The hunting party sets out, heading west from the settlement toward the prairies that stretch beyond the forested river valleys. The landscape gradually changes as you walk, fewer trees, more open grassland. By midday, you've reached a vast expanse of prairie, tall grasses swaying in the breeze as far as the eye can see. In the distance, dark shapes dot the landscape, bison, hundreds of them, grazing peacefully. The hunting party pauses on a small rise overlooking the prairie. Kitchi and the other leaders confer, studying the wind direction and the position of the bison herd. Finally, they divide the hunters into 3 groups. You stay with Kitchi's group, which will approach from downwind. "We will set the fire here," Kitchi explains, gesturing to the area behind you. "The wind will carry it away from us, toward the bison. As they move away from the fire, they will come toward our hunters waiting in those ravines." He points to barely visible depressions in the landscape where the other hunting groups are positioning themselves. The strategy becomes clear. They're using fire to direct the bison's movement, creating a controlled situation in an otherwise dangerous hunt. Several hunters begin the process of starting the fire. Using dried grass and small twigs as kindling, they transfer the embers from their fire pots to create small flames. They work methodically, starting fires at intervals along a line perpendicular to the wind direction. At first, the fires seem small and harmless, but they grow with astonishing speed, joining together into a wall of flame that races across the dry prairie grass. The heat reaches you even from a safe distance, and the crackling roar fills your ears. Dark smoke billows upward, casting an eerie shadow over the landscape. The effect on the bison is immediate. The distant shapes begin to move, first slowly, then with increasing speed, away from the advancing fire. As predicted, they head toward the ravines where hunters wait. "Now we run," says Kitchi, and the hunting party sprints forward, parallel to the fire line but at a safe distance. Running across the uneven prairie is challenging, especially while carrying weapons. Tall grass whips against your legs, hidden dips in the ground threaten to twist your ankles, and the smoke makes it difficult to see clearly. Your lungs burn with the effort, and sweat pours down your face despite the cool spring air. When you reach the area near the ravines, you can hear the thundering of bison hooves, a sound so powerful it seems to vibrate through the earth beneath your feet. The massive animals appear suddenly, emerging from a veil of smoke. Their size is shocking up close, much larger than you imagined, with massive humped shoulders and horns that curve dangerously outward. The hunters position themselves strategically, using the landscape for cover. You follow Kitchi's lead, crouching behind a small rise. He signals for you to stay put, then moves forward with 3 other hunters, their movements coordinated without words. What happens next unfolds with both terrible and awesome efficiency. As the bison funnel into the area between the ravines, hunters rise from their hiding places on both sides. Arrows fly, striking the animals in vulnerable areas behind the shoulders or in the neck. Some hunters rush forward with spears, aiming for the vital organs with precise thrusts. The bison don't surrender easily. Some charge the hunters, forcing them to dive out of the way. One animal, struck by multiple arrows but still standing, lets out a bellow of rage and pain that raises the hair on the back of your neck. The air fills with dust, smoke, and the scent of blood. The sounds are overwhelming. Thundering hooves, shouts of hunters, the snorts and bellows of wounded bison. It's both terrifying and exhilarating, this ancient dance between predator and prey played out on the open prairie. When it's over, 8 bison lie dead, and the rest of the herd has disappeared over the horizon. 2 hunters have minor injuries, one gored in the leg, another with a shoulder dislocated from a fall. But considering the danger involved, it seems miraculous that no one is seriously hurt. As with the deer hunt, the aftermath is characterized by a mixture of celebration and reverence. The hunters gather around the fallen bison, offering prayers of thanks. The largest bull is decorated with tobacco offerings placed near its head, a sign of respect for the animal's spirit. Then the real work begins. Butchering even one bison is an enormous task. 8 represents an extraordinary bounty that will require the entire community's effort. Some of the meat will be cooked immediately for a celebration feast, but most must be preserved through drying to create pemmican, a concentrated mixture of dried meat, fat, and berries that will help sustain the community through leaner times. Runners are sent back to the settlement to bring more people to help with processing the bison. While waiting for them to arrive, the hunters begin the initial butchering. You're assigned to help collect the blood in containers made from bison stomachs. Nothing will be wasted. As you work, Kitchi explains the significance of what you've just participated in. The prairie fire does more than help us hunt, he says. It renews the land. After the fire, new grass will grow, tender and sweet. This brings more bison, more deer, more life to our hunting grounds. You look back at the blackened area where the fire passed. Already you can see that it's not completely destroyed. The flames moved quickly enough that they burned only the above-ground portion of the grasses, leaving the roots intact below the soil. Our grandparents' grandparents taught us to use fire this way, Kitchi continues. They learned it from watching how the lightning fires changed the land. We do smaller fires more often to keep the big fires from happening. This perspective shifts your understanding of what you've witnessed. What might have seemed like a destructive act was actually a form of land management, a way of working with natural processes rather than against them. These people aren't just surviving in their environment. They're actively shaping it, creating conditions that favour the plants and animals they depend on. By late afternoon, people from the settlement have arrived to help with the butchering. The scene transforms into a bustling outdoor workshop with specific tasks assigned based on skill and experience. Some remove hides, others cut meat into strips for drying, still others crack open bones to extract the nutritious marrow. Children collect specific plants from the nearby areas, herbs that will be used in the preservation process or in treating the hides. Elders supervise, ensuring that traditional practices are followed correctly. The atmosphere is industrious but also social, with conversation and even occasional laughter flowing between workers. You find yourself assigned to work with an elder named Makia, who is removing the sinew, the tough connective tissue that will be dried and used as thread for sewing. Her fingers move with remarkable dexterity despite her age, separating the long fibres with a bone tool. "These are the bison's final gifts," she tells you, holding up a bundle of sinew. "With these fibres, we will sew clothing from their hides, string bows with their tendons, and create the bags that will hold the meat they provide. Nothing is wasted, nothing is forgotten." As you help her collect and clean the sinew, Makia shares stories about great hunts from the past, times when the bison were so numerous they blackened the prairie from horizon to horizon. She also speaks of lean years when the herds moved away and the people had to rely on stored food to survive. "The bison and the people are connected," she explains. "When we burn the prairie at the right times, in the right ways, the new grass brings the bison close to our hunting grounds. When we take only what we need and use everything we take, the bison continue to offer themselves to us." By evening, much of the initial processing has been completed. Some of the hunters will stay overnight to protect the meat from wolves and other predators, while others return to the settlement with the first loads of meat and hides. You join the group heading back, your arms aching from the day's labour, your clothing stained with blood and grease. The return journey feels much longer than the outward one, fatigue weighing down each step, but there's also a sense of satisfaction of having participated in something essential and meaningful. You've helped secure food that will feed many people for many days. You've witnessed a form of environmental management that's sophisticated in its understanding of ecological relationships, despite its apparent simplicity. Back at the settlement, those who remained behind have prepared for the returning hunters. Cooking fires burn brightly in the gathering dusk, and the smell of fresh cornbread fills the air. Children run to greet the returning party, eager to hear about the hunt and see what has been brought back. That night, a celebration begins. Fresh bison meat, liver, heart, and choice cuts is cooked over open fires. Everyone in the community receives a portion, even those too old or young to have participated in the hunt or processing. There's a tangible sense of community, of shared purpose and shared bounty. As you eat the tender meat, savouring its rich, wild flavour, you find yourself reflecting on the differences between this world and the one you came from. Here, there is no separation between people and their food sources, no anonymity in the process of sustaining life. Every bite comes with knowledge of the animal that provided it, the fire that shaped the landscape where it grazed, the collective effort that transformed it from living creature to nourishing meal. After eating, people gather around the central fires. Drums appear, made from wood frames with stretched hides, likely from previous hunts. The rhythmic beating begins slowly, then picks up pace. Singers raise their voices in songs that seem to tell the story of the hunt, though you can't understand the words. Some of the hunters rise to dance, reenacting moments from the day, the setting of the fire, the running bison, the successful kills. Their movements are both literal and symbolic, communicating not just what happened, but the meaning behind it. You watch, mesmerized by the firelight on the dancers' faces, the shadows they cast against the earth mounds that rise behind them. This is more than entertainment. It's a way of recording history, of teaching, of reinforcing cultural values. As the night deepens and your exhaustion becomes overwhelming, you make your way back to Talisa and Kitchi's dwelling. Their children are already asleep, curled together on their sleeping mats. Talisa is still at the celebration, but Kitchi has returned and sits quietly in the doorway, gazing up at the stars. "You did well today," he says as you settle onto your sleeping mat. "Tomorrow you will help with the hides." The simple praise fills you with unexpected warmth. In this world, where survival depends on everyone's contribution, being useful is the highest form of belonging. Why did some of the bison meat go into those special containers, you ask, remembering how certain portions had been carefully set aside? "Those are for trading," Kitchi explains. "When the moon is full again, traders will come from the Great Lakes. They bring shells and copper for our bison meat and hides." This information surprises you. Somehow you hadn't considered that these people would engage in long-distance trade. It's another reminder not to underestimate the complexity of their society. "Rest now," Kitchi says, noticing your drooping eyelids. "The hides wait for no one." As you drift towards sleep, the distant sounds of drums and singing create a soothing backdrop. Your body aches from the day's exertions, but it's a good kind of pain, the kind that comes from useful work, from participating in something larger than yourself. Your last thoughts before sleep claims you are of fire racing across the prairie, of massive bison running beneath a smoke-darkened sky, of the intricate relationship between people, animals, and landscape that you've only just begun to understand. In this ancient America, survival isn't simply about taking what you need from the environment. It's about actively managing the land, about understanding the complex web of relationships that sustain all life, about giving as well as receiving. Tomorrow will bring new lessons, new challenges, but for now, you rest, your dreams filled with prairie fire and thundering hooves. Morning comes with the sounds of birds and quiet conversation. Your body has adapted somewhat to the physical demands of this life. The soreness is still there, but less intense, more familiar. You rise to find Talisa already preparing a morning meal of corn cakes cooked on hot stones. These are different from yesterday's food, thinner, crispier, and flavoured with what might be wild berries. "Today you learn to work with the hides," she says, handing you a portion. "It is women's work, but good for all to know." After eating, you join a group of women gathered near the edge of the settlement. Spread out before them are the fresh bison hides from yesterday's hunt, each one enormous and at least 8 feet across. The smell is powerful, raw, metallic, and organic. An older woman named Wachiwi directs the work. Her hands are gnarled like tree roots, her skin deeply lined from decades under the sun, but her movements are sure and efficient. "First, we clean," she explains, demonstrating how to use a bone tool to scrape away bits of flesh and fat still clinging to the underside of the hide. Every bit of meat goes to the cooking pots, nothing wasted. The work is surprisingly difficult. The hide is heavy and unwieldy, the scraping requires just the right amount of pressure, and the smell makes your stomach turn occasionally. But there's something satisfying about the transformation, watching the raw hide gradually become cleaner, more workable. As you labour alongside the women, they talk among themselves, sometimes including you in their conversation. They speak of children and grandchildren, of dreams that came in the night, of plants they hope to gather when the season is right. It strikes you that despite the vast differences in lifestyle, people here share the same fundamental concerns and joys as in your time: family, community, the rhythms of daily life. Wachiwi notices your awkward scraping technique and pauses to correct your grip on the bone tool. Her touch is gentle but firm as she positions your hands properly. "Like this," she says, guiding your movements. "Let the tool do the work. Too much force tears the hide." You try again with her guidance, finding that indeed a lighter touch with the proper angle works much better. She nods approvingly before moving on to help another worker. Talisa works nearby, explaining the next steps in the process. "After cleaning, we will soak the hides in water mixed with the brains of the bison," she says, noticing your surprised expression. "The brains make the hide soft and easy to work. One animal's brain is enough to tan its own hide. That is the way of balance. Then we will smoke the hides over a slow fire of green wood," adds another woman. "This keeps them from getting stiff when they get wet. A good smoking means the difference between comfort and misery when the rains come." You begin to appreciate the depth of knowledge involved in what might seem like simple survival tasks. Every step in processing these hides represents generations of accumulated wisdom passed down through careful teaching and observation. There are no written instructions, no videos to watch, just the direct transmission of skills from person to person. By midday, your arms ache from the repetitive scraping motion and your back protests from bending over the large hides. When a break is called, you gratefully straighten up, stretching your tired muscles. A young girl approaches with a water container made from a hollowed gourd. The water is cool and refreshing, though it carries a slight earthy taste that reminds you it hasn't been treated with modern purification methods. You've been drinking this water for days now, without ill effects. Perhaps your body is adapting to this world in more ways than you realized. As you rest, Wachiwi sits beside you, her eyes studying your face with curiosity. "You work differently," she observes. "Your hands know soil and plants, but not hides and meat. Where did you learn before coming here?" The question catches you off guard. How do you explain your background to someone from this time and place? You decide on a version of the truth. "I come from far away," you say. "My people live differently. We don't hunt bison or grow corn the way you do." Wachiwi nods thoughtfully. "All people must eat, must clothe themselves," she says. "Different lands teach different ways." She seems satisfied with this explanation, accepting your difference without suspicion. The work continues through the afternoon. The cleaned hides are moved to large wooden containers where they'll soak in the brain solution overnight. Tomorrow they'll be rinsed in the river, stretched on frames, and smoked to complete the tanning process. As the day winds down, Kitchi appears with news. "The elders have called a council meeting tonight," he tells you. "You should come. There is talk of travelling to the western forests before the trading season begins." That evening, after another meal of bison meat and corn, people gather in a large circular structure near the central mound. Unlike the family dwellings, this building has open sides with a roof supported by thick wooden posts. In the centre, a fire burns in a clay-lined pit, its smoke rising through an opening in the roof. Elders sit in a semicircle on the far side of the fire, their faces solemn in the flickering light. Other community members arrange themselves around the remaining space, with those of higher status closer to the elders. You find a place near Kitchi and Talisa, somewhat toward the back but still able to see and hear clearly. The council begins with the smoking of a ceremonial pipe, similar to what you witnessed before the hunt. Then an elder rises to speak, his voice carrying clearly despite his age. "The time approaches for our journey to the western forests," he announces. "The moon of new leaves is upon us, and we must gather wood for our tools and buildings before the trading season." He gestures to another elder, who stands and continues the discussion. "This year we must go farther than before. The close forests have given much to us, but they need time to regrow. We will travel 5 days west to the tall pines beyond the small river." This news generates murmurs among the gathered people. A 5-day journey is significant, requiring substantial preparation and presenting various challenges. Different voices rise, asking questions or offering suggestions about who should go, what supplies are needed, how many canoes to take. You listen, fascinated by this window into their decision-making process. It's not simply the elders dictating what will happen. There's genuine discussion, with people of various ages and roles contributing their knowledge. You notice that women's voices are heard with the same respect as men's, particularly when discussing practical matters of food supplies or medicine that might be needed. Eventually, a consensus emerges. A party of 30 people will make the journey, enough to harvest and transport the needed wood, but not so many that the settlement's other work will suffer. They will depart in 3 days after sufficient food has been prepared for the journey. As the meeting concludes, Kitchi turns to you. "You will come with us," he says. It's not quite a question, but not quite a command either. It is good to see different lands, to understand how all things connect. The next 2 days are filled with preparations. Women prepare pemmican, a concentrated mixture of dried bison meat, fat and berries that will provide sustenance during the journey. Men inspect and repair canoes made from hollowed logs, sealing cracks with pine resin. Children help gather specific plants that will be needed for medicine or repairs along the way. You're assigned to help an elder named Ahanu, who is crafting new paddles for the canoes. Under his patient guidance, you learn to use stone adzes and scrapers to shape the wood, transforming straight saplings into functional tools. The wood tells you what it wants to become, Ahanu explains, showing you how to work with the grain rather than against it. Listen with your hands. At first, this sounds like mystical talk, but as you work, you begin to understand. Different pieces of wood have different qualities. Some are harder, some more flexible, some prone to splitting if cut the wrong way. By paying close attention to these characteristics, you can either work in harmony with the wood's nature or fight against it. The morning of departure arrives clear and cool, with mist rising from the river as the travelling party gathers at the shore. 6 canoes wait, loaded with supplies. You're assigned to Kitchi's canoe, along with Ahanu and 2 younger men named Tokala and Hinto. Farewells are exchanged. Not emotional partings, but practical wishes for good hunting and safe returns. Talisa hands Kitchi a small pouch of what appears to be medicine, their fingers touching briefly in a moment of quiet intimacy. Then you're on the water, kneeling in the middle of the canoe as the others paddle. The vessel moves with surprising speed and stability, responding to subtle shifts in the paddler's rhythm. The sensation is both exhilarating and peaceful. The gentle rocking motion, the sound of water lapping against the wood, the changing shoreline sliding past. The first day's journey follows the main river westward. The landscape is mostly familiar, similar forests and occasional clearings to what surrounds the settlement. You pass several smaller villages where people wave or call out greetings from the shore. That night, camp is made on a sandy bank. No permanent shelters are built, just simple lean-tos of branches and hides to provide minimal protection. Food is shared from the communal supplies, and stories are told around the fire. You listen, picking up words and phrases in their language, gradually understanding more of their conversation. The second day brings a change in the river. It narrows and quickens, requiring more skillful navigation. Several times the canoes must be carried around rapids or fallen trees that block the way. These portages are exhausting. The canoes are heavy, the terrain often difficult, and the insects relentless in their attention to your sweat-soaked skin. By the third day, you've left the main river, turning onto a smaller tributary that flows from the northwest. The water here is clearer, colder, and the landscape begins to change. The familiar deciduous forests give way to more conifers, pine, spruce, and fir trees growing tall and straight. These are what we seek, Ahanu tells you, pointing to particularly tall, straight pines. For building, for tools, for canoes. The forests near our home have many trees, but not these special ones. On the fourth day, the tributary becomes too shallow for the canoes. The remainder of the journey must be completed on foot. The group establishes a base camp where the canoes are secured and most supplies left under guard. Only essential tools and food are carried for the final leg of the journey. The forest you enter is different from any you've seen before, cathedral-like in its dimensions, with massive pine trees stretching toward the sky. Their trunks rise straight and true for 50 feet before the first branches appear. The forest floor is carpeted with needles that muffle your footsteps, creating an atmosphere of hushed reverence. These trees remember the time before people, Ahanu says quietly, running his hand along a trunk wider than his arm span. They have seen many generations come and go. The harvesting process is not what you expected. Rather than cutting indiscriminately, the party moves through the forest with careful deliberation. Ahanu and other elders inspect many trees before selecting specific ones for harvest. They consider not just size and straightness, but also position, choosing trees whose removal will create beneficial openings in the canopy for younger trees to grow. Before each tree is cut, a small offering is placed at its base. Tobacco, beads, or small carvings. Words of thanks are spoken, acknowledging the tree's sacrifice. Then the work begins, with stone axes making careful cuts at the base. It's slow, labour-intensive work, but the men approach it methodically, taking turns to avoid exhaustion. When a tree finally falls, there's no celebration, only focused attention on the next stage of processing. Branches are removed and the trunk is cut into manageable sections that can be carried back to the canoes. Nothing is wasted. Even the smaller branches are bundled for use as kindling or crafting material. As the day progresses, you notice something interesting about this forest. Despite being far from the settlement, it doesn't feel entirely wild. There's a subtle order to it, areas where the understory has been thinned, creating park-like spaces between the massive trees. In some places, you spot the charred remains of old fires, but the trees above show no damage. Have people burned this forest? You ask Tokala as you help him strip bark from a fallen trunk. He nods. Every few seasons, when the forest floor grows too thick, small fires clear the dead wood and brush but don't harm the big trees. This prevents the big fires that destroy everything. Like the prairie fires, you realize aloud. Yes, Tokala agrees. Fire is a tool, like an axe or a bow. Used wrongly, it destroys. Used wisely, it helps the land stay healthy. This perspective on fire management continues to fascinate you. These people aren't simply taking from the environment, they're actively working to maintain it, using their understanding of natural processes to create sustainable conditions. By evening, enough trees have been harvested for the group's needs. Some men begin the process of shaping the raw logs into rough canoe forms that will be easier to transport. Others prepare the camp for night, building small fires and setting up shelters. After eating, you find yourself sitting with Ahanu near one of the fires. The old man seems contemplative, staring into the flames with a distant expression. "These forests are changing," he says eventually. "When I was a boy, we didn't need to travel so far to find good trees. The spirits of the trees speak to me in my dreams sometimes. They worry." "What do they worry about?" you ask. Ahanu sighs. That people forget the balance, that we take more than we give back. He looks at you directly. "I have heard stories from traders who travel far. They speak of a people in the western mountains who cut down all their trees and could not live in their valley anymore. The soil washed away, the water dried up, and they had to leave their homes." You recognize this as a reference to the Anasazi, whose civilization in Chaco Canyon collapsed partly due to environmental factors, including deforestation. "How do your people avoid that fate?" you ask. "We listen. Ahanu says simply, to the land, to the animals, to the memories of our ancestors. When the bison move, we follow. When the forest needs rest, we go elsewhere. We take only what we need, and we give back with fire, with planting, with respect. He picks up a handful of pine needles, letting them filter through his fingers. All things are connected. The trees clean the air we breathe. They hold the soil that grows our corn. Their roots guide the water that fills our rivers. If we harm one part, all parts suffer. This ecological understanding, expressed without scientific terminology but deeply insightful nonetheless, makes you wonder about your own society's relationship with the environment. These people, often labelled primitive in modern historical accounts, possess a sophisticated understanding of environmental systems that developed through generations of close observation and cultural knowledge. The night deepens around you, stars appearing in breathtaking profusion through gaps in the forest canopy. The fires burn low and people begin to seek their sleeping places. You find a spot beneath a towering pine, the ground softened by generations of fallen needles. As you drift towards sleep, the forest speaks in its own language, the soft sighing of wind through high branches, the occasional call of a night bird, the distant hooting of an owl. These sounds have remained essentially unchanged for thousands of years, connecting you to all who have slept in these woods before. Morning brings a light mist that clings to the forest floor, giving the trees an ethereal quality as they disappear into whiteness above. The camp stirs to life gradually, people moving with the quiet efficiency that comes from long practice. After a quick meal, the work of transporting the harvested wood begins. It's physically demanding. Each log must be carried through uneven forest terrain back to the waiting canoes. Everyone participates, working in teams to manage the heavier pieces. By midday, you reach the base camp where the canoes wait. The logs are carefully loaded, balancing the weight to maintain stability on the return journey. Some of the smaller, straighter pieces are set aside for making new spears and arrows. These will be distributed among the hunters when you return to the settlement. The return journey flows more swiftly, travelling with the current rather than against it. At night, camped along the river, there's a sense of accomplishment among the group. Songs are sung, stories shared more freely than during the outward journey. One evening, a young man named Keme brings out a small flute made from a hollow bird bone. The melody he plays is hauntingly beautiful, simple yet profound, rising and falling like the river itself. Others join in, some singing, some tapping rhythms on improvised drums made from stretched hide over wooden frames. In these moments, you glimpse another dimension of their culture beyond mere survival. Despite the constant work required to sustain life, they've created space for beauty, for art, for the expression of deeper emotions and connections. On the final day of the journey, as the familiar shoreline of the settlement comes into view, you find yourself reflecting on all you've learned. These people, living nearly 1,000 years before Columbus would arrive on distant shores, have created a way of life that's both simpler and more complex than you initially realized. Their technology may be limited to stone, wood, bone and hide, but their understanding of ecological relationships and sustainable resource management reflects a sophistication born of generations living in close relationship with their environment. The canoes glide toward the landing place, where people have gathered to welcome the returning party. You see Talisa among them, her children clinging to her skirts as she searches the approaching canoes for sight of Kitchi. As you step ashore, the familiar sights and sounds of the settlement wash over you. The smoke from cooking fires, the laughter of children, the rhythmic pounding of corn being processed. After the journey through the forest, it feels almost like coming home. In the days that follow, you watch as the harvested wood is transformed into new canoes, tool handles, support beams for buildings, and countless other necessary items. Nothing is wasted. Even the smallest scraps find purpose as kindling, gaming pieces, or children's toys. One evening, as you help Kitchi shape a new paddle from a piece of the pine you helped harvest, he pauses and looks at you thoughtfully. "You learn quickly," he says. "You see with open eyes. This is good." The simple praise warms you, a reminder that in this world your value comes not from possessions or status, but from your contribution to the community's well-being. There is a clarity to this existence that cuts through the complexities and contradictions of modern life. As you finish the paddle, running your fingers over the smooth surface you've helped create, you realize that you've gained more than just survival skills during your time here. You've glimpsed a different way of being human, one that might hold lessons for the uncertain future that awaits your own world. The completed paddle gleams in the firelight, a tangible symbol of connection between past and present, between humans and forest, between individual effort and community need. In its grain, you can read the story of the tall pine that once reached toward the sky, now transformed by human hands into a tool that will dance with river currents for years to come. Outside, the night deepens over the settlement. The great mounds stand as silent sentinels in the darkness, monuments to a people whose achievements have too often been forgotten or diminished in the standard telling of American history. But you have seen firsthand the complexity of their society, the depth of their knowledge, and the wisdom of their relationship with the land that sustains them. Sleep comes easily tonight, your body tired from honest work, your mind full of new understanding. Tomorrow will bring more lessons, more challenges, more opportunities to learn from these people who have mastered the art of living in ancient America. The days that follow the forest journey settle into a rhythm. You've become familiar with the daily patterns of life in Cahokia, the early morning stirring as people begin their work, the midday meal when the sun is highest, the evening gatherings around communal fires. Your hands have grown calloused from labour, your skin darker from days spent under the sun, your legs stronger from walking everywhere. One morning, as you help Talisa tend to her garden plot near their dwelling, she pauses and points to the river. "Look," she says, "the traders come." You follow her gaze to see several canoes appearing around the river bend. These vessels are different from the ones used for the forest journey, larger, more elaborately decorated with distinctive painted symbols on their sides. Each carries 4 or 5 people, along with bundles of goods carefully arranged and covered with woven mats. "Who are they?" you ask, watching as the canoes make their way toward the settlement's landing place. "People of the Great Lakes," Talisa replies. "They come twice each year, when the first flowers bloom and when the leaves turn colour. They bring shells and copper and other treasures from distant waters." Throughout the settlement, word of the traders' arrival spreads quickly. People begin to gather by the river, some bringing items they've prepared specifically for trading. You notice bundles of dried bison meat, carefully tanned hides, bags of what might be medicinal plants, and intricately woven baskets. Kitchi appears from the direction of the hunting grounds, his face breaking into a rare smile when he spots the approaching canoes. "Come," he says to you, "this is something you should see." By the time you reach the landing place, the first canoe has already arrived. Its occupants, 3 men and 2 women, step ashore with practiced ease, greeting the waiting elders with formal gestures that suggest a long-established protocol. The visitors look subtly different from the Cahokians. Their clothing style varies slightly, with more elaborate beadwork and different patterns. Their language, while clearly related to what you've been hearing, contains different sounds and rhythms. Yet there's an easy familiarity between them and your hosts that speaks of generations of interaction. "They come from 12 days' journey to the north," Kitchi explains quietly, as you watch the greetings unfold. Beyond the great lake that has no opposite shore, their home is in a land of birch trees and wild rice. More canoes arrive, and soon the riverbank is busy with activity. The formal greetings complete, the trading begins, not as a chaotic marketplace, but as a structured series of exchanges. Representatives from Cahokian families approach the traders one by one, presenting their offerings and examining what the visitors have brought. You're fascinated by the goods that emerge from the traders' canoes. There are shells unlike any you've seen before, large spiral-shaped shells that clearly don't come from the nearby river. Kitchi notices your interest. Those come from the Great Saltwater, far to the south, he explains. They pass from hand to hand, from people to people, travelling many moons' journey to reach us. There are pieces of a reddish metal that you recognise as copper, some raw and others worked into elaborate ornaments and tools. Bright feathers from birds you've never seen, stones in unusual colours and patterns, and bundles of what appears to be dried fish are among the other items being offered. The copper comes from the north shores of the greatest lake, Kitchi continues. Special stones come from the western mountains. Each land has its gifts, and through trading, all people can share in them. You begin to understand that what you're witnessing isn't simply commerce. It's a complex network of relationships that connects distant communities across the continent. These goods aren't travelling along a single trade route, but through a web of exchanges, passing from one group to another, sometimes travelling hundreds or even thousands of miles from their source. An elder beckons to Kitchi, who excuses himself to participate in the trading. You watch as he presents several finely crafted bison hide robes, receiving in exchange some copper pieces and a bundle of unusual feathers. Talisa joins you, her children in tow. The trading will continue for 3 days, she explains. Then there will be a feast and storytelling. The traders bring not just goods, but news and stories from distant places. That evening, the atmosphere in the settlement is festive. The visitors are welcomed into family dwellings as guests, sharing food and exchanging news. You find yourself in Kitchi and Talisa's home, seated across from a trader named Namid, whose weather-beaten face and calm demeanour suggest years of travelling the river routes. As you eat, Namid speaks of his journey southward, describing villages and landscapes that are clearly familiar to your hosts, though they've never visited them personally. He tells of unusual weather patterns, successful hunts, conflicts between distant groups, and new babies born to families connected through previous marriages. This, you realise, is how news travels in a world without written records or electronic communication, carried by traders who memorise information to share as they travel. Later, as the children drift off to sleep, the conversation turns to more serious matters. Namid mentions that one of the northern villages has experienced a poor harvest, with disease affecting their corn crops. This leads to a discussion of how to adjust trading patterns to ensure the affected community receives the food they need. 3 summers ago, our crops failed, Kitchi reminds the others. The people of the river mouth brought us corn when our children were hungry. Now we must do the same for the northern lake people. The matter-of-fact way they discuss sharing resources with distant communities impresses you. There seems to be an understanding that mutual aid isn't charity, but a form of insurance. Helping others in need creates relationships that will provide support when your own community faces challenges. The next morning, you're invited to accompany Kitchi to observe more of the trading. As you approach the river, you notice that some exchanges are happening away from the main group, with individuals meeting privately to trade specific items. Not all trading happens where everyone can see, Kitchi explains when you ask about this. Some knowledge is only for certain eyes. Medicine ways, spiritual objects, songs of power. These are exchanged between those who understand their proper use. This adds another layer to your understanding of the trading system. It's not just physical goods that move along these networks, but also knowledge, cultural practices, and spiritual concepts. Throughout the day, you observe the careful negotiations that characterize the trading process. There is no common currency, no coins or paper money, yet people seem to agree on the relative value of different items. A particularly fine bison robe might be worth several pieces of worked copper. A bundle of specialized medicinal herbs from the southern swamps might exchange for a quantity of flint from specific quarries. How do they know what things are worth? You ask Ahanu, who has joined you in watching the proceedings. The elder considers your question thoughtfully. Value comes from many things, he says. How far something has travelled, how difficult it was to make or find, how rare it is, how necessary for life. He gestures toward a trader displaying a string of unusual blue beads. Those stones come from mountains 10 moons' journey to the southwest. Few people know the way there and back. Their rarity makes them valuable. As the day progresses, you notice that not all the trading involves physical goods. Some exchanges seem to be promises or agreements, commitments to future actions or alliances. One elder from Cahokia presents a specially marked arrow to a northern trader who receives it with formal solemnity before placing it carefully in a decorated case. That is a marriage agreement, Ahanu explains, seeing your curious look. The elder's granddaughter will marry the trader's nephew when the leaves fall. The arrow carries the promise. This glimpse into the diplomatic aspects of trade expands your understanding further. These networks don't just move goods, but also create and maintain relationships between communities, marriage alliances, peace agreements, mutual aid pacts. By the afternoon, the focus shifts from trading to cultural exchange. In the central plaza, visitors display skills from their homeland. A woman demonstrates a distinct pottery technique, shaping clay with remarkable speed and precision. A man shows a different method of flint knapping, producing stone tools with a style unfamiliar to the Cahokians. Children from both groups play together, teaching each other games from their respective communities. Talisa finds you watching a northern woman weaving a pattern you haven't seen before. Every time the traders come, we learn new things, she says. New patterns, new stories, new songs. This is how knowledge travels. You realize that what you're witnessing is a form of cultural cross-pollination. Innovations and ideas don't stay isolated within single communities, but spread through these trading networks, allowing adaptations and improvements to move across vast distances. The second day of trading brings new activities. Some of the Cahokian men take the northern visitors hunting, while others lead them to the top of the great central mound to perform ceremonies that aren't meant for your eyes. You spend the day helping Talisa and other women prepare for the feast that will mark the traders' final evening in the settlement. This preparation offers its own window into the trading network. The meal will include not just local foods, but ingredients that have come from far away. Salt from distant springs, nuts that don't grow in the local forest, spices with distinctive flavours. Talisa shows you a small clay jar containing a dark, rich substance. Chocolate, she says, letting you smell the intense aroma. It comes from far to the south, where the weather is always warm. Only the most important people taste it, and only on special occasions. You recognize this as cacao, which originated in Mesoamerica. The fact that it has made its way to this Mississippi River settlement demonstrates just how extensive these trade networks are, connecting cultures across what will later be defined as different countries. That evening, the feast unfolds with elaborate ceremony. Food is shared according to strict protocols, with elders and important visitors served first. Musicians play flutes made of bone and drums of stretched hide, their rhythms setting a ceremonial pace to the proceedings. After eating, the formal storytelling begins. Designated speakers from both communities take turns sharing tales, some clearly ancient myths passed down through generations, others more recent accounts of noteworthy events or people. The stories are performed as much as told, with dramatic gestures, changes in voice, and sometimes multiple people playing different roles. One northern trader shares a story about a journey to the western mountains, describing landscapes so different from the river valley that they seem almost fantastical. Towering peaks covered in snow even in summer, valleys where water emerges hot from the ground, forests of trees so massive that 10 men holding hands cannot encircle their trunks. You realise he's describing the Rocky Mountains, and features like geysers and giant sequoias places thousands of miles from where you sit. Though he's clearly never been there himself, the details have the slightly exaggerated quality of information passed through multiple tellings. The core geography is recognisable. These oral traditions preserve and transmit knowledge of distant lands with remarkable accuracy. A Cahokian elder follows with a story of the settlement's founding, speaking of ancestors who followed a vision to this confluence of mighty rivers. The tale weaves together practical considerations: fertile soil, abundant fish, accessible transportation routes, with spiritual elements about signs from the spirit world and guidance from animal helpers. As the night deepens and the stories continue, you find yourself mesmerised by this ancient form of entertainment and education. Without books, films, or digital media, these communities have developed oral traditions of extraordinary richness and complexity. The stories contain practical knowledge, moral lessons, historical records, and spiritual teachings, all wrapped in narratives designed to be memorable and engaging. The final day of the trader's visit has a different character. The serious business concluded, there's time for celebration and games. Young men from both groups engage in friendly competitions, foot races, wrestling matches, tests of accuracy with bow and arrow. Women compare their skills in weaving, pottery, and identifying medicinal plants. You join in where you can, still clumsy compared to those who've grown up with these activities, but welcomed nonetheless. During an archery contest, a northern trader named Bodaway notices your struggling attempts and offers guidance. The bow is not just a tool, he explains, adjusting your grip and stance. It is an extension of yourself. Breathe with it. Feel its strength become yours. Under his patient instruction, your accuracy improves noticeably. When you finally hit near the centre of the target, a bundle of grass attached to a tree trunk, Bodaway nods with approval. You learn quickly for someone not raised with the bow, he observes. Where did you say your people dwell? The question reminds you of your unusual situation. Far away, you answer vaguely, in a place very different from this. Bodaway studies your face for a moment, then smiles slightly. All people are connected, no matter how distant their homes, he says. That is what trading teaches us. By late afternoon, the visitors begin preparing for their departure. The canoes are loaded with the goods they've received in trade: bison robes, dried meat, specialized stone tools, woven baskets, and medicinal plants that grow only in this region. In return, they've left copper, shells, unusual stones, feathers, and other items from distant places. The farewell ceremonies are as formalised as the welcome was. Gifts are exchanged between leaders, promises made for future visits, messages entrusted for delivery to other communities along the trader's route home. You watch as Kitchi presents a specially crafted pipe to one of the northern elders, a gift that clearly carries significant meaning based on how reverently it's received. As the canoes push off from shore, the visitors raise their paddles in salute. The Cahokians respond with a song that rises and falls like the river itself, a melody that speaks of parting and future reunion. You stand with Talisa and her family, watching until the canoes disappear around the river bend, heading north toward distant homelands. They will return when the leaves change colour, Talisa says, placing a hand on your shoulder, and they will bring new stories, new treasures. That evening, as the community settles back into its normal rhythms, you find yourself sitting with Kitchi and Ahanu near a small fire outside their dwelling. The trading days have given you a new perspective on this ancient world, not as isolated communities struggling for survival, but as parts of a vast interconnected network spanning the continent. The trading connects all people, Ahanu says, seeming to read your thoughts. From the great salt water in the east to the shining mountains in the west, from the northern ice to the southern jungles, no community stands alone. Have you travelled to these distant places? You ask, curious about how far these people might range from their home settlement. Kitchi shakes his head. I have gone 5 days' journey in each direction, but no further. The world is too vast for one person to see all of it, but through trading we know of places our feet will never touch, people our eyes will never see. Ahanu adds another piece of wood to the fire, watching as the flames leap higher. My grandfather's grandfather once travelled to the great salt water in the south, he says. He brought back shells and strange fruits and stories of people who build on islands of mud in the water. His journey took one full cycle of seasons, and many thought he had died before he returned. This glimpse of long-distance travel in the pre-Columbian era fascinates you. Without horses or wheeled vehicles, such journeys would have been enormous undertakings. Yet clearly some individuals did venture far from their homelands, expanding geographical knowledge and establishing new connections. How do traders find their way through unknown lands, you ask? Without maps, or you catch yourself before mentioning compasses or GPS. The rivers are the great paths, Kitchi explains. They connect all places, and once learned, their patterns guide the traveller. The stars show direction at night, the sun during day, and each region has its landmarks, unusual mountains, distinctive trees, unique rock formations. And there are markers, Ahanu adds, signs left by travellers who came before, arrangements of stones, carvings on trees, paths worn into the earth. Those who travel regularly between certain places maintain these markers for those who follow. You're struck by the sophistication of this navigation system. Developed without written maps or magnetic compasses, it relies instead on close observation of natural features, astronomical knowledge, and cooperative maintenance of route markers. A different kind of technology, but effective nonetheless. As darkness settles more deeply around you, the conversation turns to what the traders brought besides physical goods. Ahanu mentions new songs that will be added to ceremonial occasions. Kitchi speaks of news about changing hunting patterns far to the north, information that might influence when and where the Cahokians direct their own hunting efforts in the coming season. The most valuable things that move along the trading paths cannot be held in the hand, Ahanu says thoughtfully. Knowledge, stories, warnings, blessings, these travel with the traders and change the lives of those who receive them. You think about how ideas and innovations must have spread across the continent through these networks. New agricultural techniques, tool-making methods, architectural designs, social practices. Without formal educational institutions or written texts, this person-to-person transmission of knowledge was the primary mechanism for cultural development and adaptation. As the fire burns low and the night grows cool, you find yourself reflecting on how this ancient trading system compares to the global networks of your own time. Despite the vast technological differences, you can see fundamental similarities. The way economic exchange creates social connections, how goods and ideas travel together, the importance of trust and reputation in maintaining relationships across distances. Tomorrow, Kitchi says, as you prepare to seek your sleeping mat, we will sort what was gained in the trading. Some items will go to the temple, some to the chief's house, others to families based on their needs and contributions. This glimpse into the distribution system adds another layer to your understanding. The trading isn't just external between communities, but also internal, with mechanisms for allocating resources within the settlement according to some combination of status, need, and merit. Sleep comes easily after the excitement of the past 3 days. Your dreams are filled with canoes travelling endless rivers, carrying shells and copper and stories between distant shores. In these dreams, you see the entire continent as it was in 1150, not divided by political boundaries or carved into private property, but connected by waterways that serve as highways for the movement of goods, people, and ideas. You see great settlements along these waterways, some like Cahokia with its impressive earthen mounds, others with different architectural styles reflecting local materials and cultural preferences. Between them flow the rivers of trade, pulsing with movement like blood vessels in a living organism, keeping the whole system vital and responsive to changing conditions. When you wake the next morning, these dream images linger, giving you a new appreciation for the sophisticated world you've been experiencing. This isn't a primitive society barely surviving, as popular imagination often portrays ancient Native American life. It's a complex civilization with extensive trade networks, specialized production, social stratification, monumental architecture, and rich cultural traditions, all developed without metal tools, wheeled vehicles, or draft animals. As you join Talisa and her family for the morning meal, you notice new items in their dwelling. A small piece of copper shaped into a decorative pin, unusual feathers added to a ceremonial object hanging on the wall, a string of blue stone beads that Talisa is weaving into her daughter's hair. "From the trading," she explains, seeing your interest. "Kitchi traded well for our family." Outside, the settlement is returning to its normal activities. People work in the garden plots, process materials for crafts, prepare food, and tend to children. But there's a subtle difference now. New items incorporated into daily life, new stories being shared, new knowledge being integrated into the community's collective wisdom. You realise that what you've witnessed is not just an economic event, but a cultural renewal, a periodic infusion of fresh ideas and materials that helps keep the society vital and adaptive. Through the trading networks, each community maintains connections to the broader world, preventing isolation and stagnation. As you move through the day, helping with various tasks and continuing to learn the ways of this ancient place, you carry with you this expanded understanding of pre-Columbian America, not as scattered groups surviving in isolation, but as an interconnected web of communities, engaged in constant exchange and communication across a vast and varied landscape. The rivers continue their timeless flow past the settlement, carrying occasional canoes up and down stream, local hunters, fishers, messengers between nearby villages. You watch them now with different eyes, seeing each waterway as part of the complex transportation network that binds together the ancient American world. That night, as you lie on your sleeping mat listening to the sounds of the settling community, you reflect on how much your perspective has changed since you first arrived here. The ancient America you're experiencing is far more sophisticated, connected, and dynamic than you ever imagined. A world with its own technologies, economies, and social systems perfectly adapted to the environment and resources available. Sleep approaches, bringing with it dreams of distant mountains, great lakes, and wide prairies, all connected by the flowing rivers of trade that carry goods, ideas, and stories across the vast tapestry of ancient America. Tomorrow will bring new lessons, new understandings, but for now, you rest, cradled in the knowledge of a world both simpler and more complex than the one you left behind. The waning moon has completed nearly a full cycle since your arrival in ancient America. You've worked in the cornfields, hunted on the prairie, travelled to distant forests, and witnessed the trading networks that connect far-flung communities. Your hands, once soft, now carries calluses earned through labour. Your eyes, once accustomed to electric lights and digital screens, have adjusted to reading the subtle signs of nature and the nuanced expressions of people whose language you're still learning. But there is one aspect of life in Cahokia that remains somewhat mysterious to you, the spiritual practices and ceremonies that seem to weave through everything, yet remain partially hidden from your full understanding. You've noticed the regular offerings made before hunting, the expressions of gratitude for harvested plants, the reverence shown to certain animals. You've observed how specific mounds appear aligned with celestial events, how elders watch the sky with careful attention, how certain spaces within the settlement seem reserved for special purposes. Your opportunity to learn more comes unexpectedly one evening when Kitchi returns from a meeting with the elders. His expression is both solemn and excited as he speaks to Talisa in low tones. She listens intently, nodding occasionally, then turns to look at you. The green corn ceremony begins tomorrow with the new moon, she tells you. Kitchi says you should participate. It is time you understand this part of our life. That night, sleep comes fitfully as you wonder what this ceremony might entail. You've gathered that it marks the first harvest of young corn, but the secretive way people speak of it suggests deeper significance. Morning arrives with a different rhythm to the settlement. Regular work patterns are suspended as people focus on preparation for the ceremony. Some clean their dwellings thoroughly, others prepare special garments, still others gather specific plants from the surrounding areas. Talisa presents you with clothing she has prepared, a simple garment made of finely tanned deerskin, decorated with subtle patterns in earth-toned pigments. For the ceremony, she explains, your everyday clothes must be left behind with the old season. As you change into the ceremonial garment, you notice others doing the same throughout the settlement. There's a growing sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling of transition and renewal. Mid-morning, a sound cuts through the usual noises of the settlement, a deep, resonant drumbeat coming from the direction of the great central mound. The effect on the community is immediate. People pause in their preparations, faces turning toward the sound. Some begin making their way toward the central plaza, while others finish critical tasks before joining the gathering. It is time, Kitchi says, appearing at the dwelling entrance. He too wears special clothing, more elaborate than yours, with feathers and shell beads incorporated into the design. Around his neck hangs a pendant made from the copper brought by northern traders. You follow Kitchi and his family toward the central plaza. As you walk, you notice small bundles placed outside each dwelling, offerings of some kind, though their specific purpose remains unclear to you. The plaza has been transformed. The usual activities of daily life have been cleared away, replaced by an arrangement that focuses attention on the base of the great mound. There, a fire burns in a specially prepared pit, tended by elders whose faces are painted with red and white designs. Behind them, a line of steps leads up the face of the mound to the structure at its summit. People arrange themselves in what appears to be a predetermined order, with family groups together but positioned according to some social structure you don't fully comprehend. Kitchi guides your small group to a place midway between the fire and the edge of the gathering. Watch and listen, he advises quietly. This ceremony connects us to those who came before and those who will come after. It reminds us of our place in the great circle of life. The drumming continues, now joined by the sound of rattles and bone flutes. The music has a hypnotic quality, not melodic in the way you're accustomed to, but rhythmic and patterned in ways that seem to bypass your conscious mind and speak directly to something deeper. From the structure atop the mound, a figure emerges, a man wearing an elaborate headdress made from deer antlers and adorned with feathers that catch the morning light. His face and body are painted in intricate patterns of white, black, and red. He carries a staff, topped with symbols you can't decipher from this distance. The chief priest, Talisa whispers. He speaks for the people to the spirits, and for the spirits to the people. The chief priest descends the mound with deliberate steps, his movements stylized and ceremonial rather than natural. When he reaches the plaza level, other figures join him, men and women in less elaborate but still distinctive ceremonial dress, each carrying objects of apparent ritual significance. What follows is difficult for you to fully comprehend, yet impossible to look away from. The ceremony unfolds in a sequence of ritual actions, offerings placed in the fire, dances that trace patterns across the plaza, chants that rise and fall in complex harmonies. The chief priest speaks at intervals, his voice carrying clearly across the gathered community, though the archaic language he uses is largely beyond your limited understanding. Kitchi occasionally translates fragments for you in hushed tones. He gives thanks for the young corn. He remembers those who have walked to the spirit world since the last green corn ceremony. He asks for blessings on the children born during the past moon cycles. As the ceremony progresses, your awareness of time begins to shift. The rhythmic drumming, the repeated patterns of movement, the sensory elements of smoke and song create a kind of trance state. You find yourself breathing in unison with those around you, your heartbeat synchronizing with the drums. At what feels like the ceremony's peak, young women bring forward baskets containing the first young corn ears of the season. These are presented to the chief priest, who raises them toward the sky, then to the four directions, before placing some in the fire as an offering and returning the rest to be distributed. This moment seems to release a tension you hadn't fully realized was building. The community's mood shifts from solemn attention to joyful celebration. The music changes character, becoming more energetic. Children who had been remarkably still and quiet during the ceremony now move freely, laughing and playing at the edges of the gathering. Small portions of roasted young corn are distributed, first to elders and leaders, then throughout the community. When you receive your portion, just a few kernels on a piece of pottery, you follow the example of those around you, eating it slowly and thoughtfully. The taste is unlike any corn you've had before, sweeter, more intense, with a complexity of flavour that surprises you. This is corn as it existed before centuries of selective breeding for commercial agriculture, closer to its ancient origins. The first taste of the new harvest reconnects us to the earth that nourishes us, Ahanu explains, seeing your reaction. We must remember that we do not own the corn. We and the corn live together, each helping the other continue. As the formal portions of the ceremony conclude, the gathering transitions into a community celebration. Food is shared, not just the ceremonial corn, but other dishes prepared specially for the occasion. People who had maintained careful dignity during the ritual now laugh and converse freely. Children organize themselves into games that seem to have their own ceremonial patterns, passed down through generations. You find yourself sitting with Ahanu near one of the smaller mounds that surrounds the plaza. The elder seems thoughtful, watching the celebration with eyes that have seen many such gatherings. You have questions, he says, not looking at you, but somehow aware of your mental state. Ask them now, while the barriers between worlds are thinner. The invitation surprises you, but you don't hesitate. The mounds, you begin, gesturing to the enormous earthwork rising before you. How do you build them, and why in these particular places and shapes? Ahanu nods, as if approving the question. The mounds speak to both the earth and the sky, he says. Their places are chosen where the energies of the land are strong, where waters meet, where the earth itself seems to rise naturally. Their shapes and arrangements reflect the patterns we see in the stars. He points to the great central mound and the smaller ones surrounding the plaza. When the sun rises at the beginning of planting season, it appears directly over that smaller mound when viewed from the chief's house on the great mound. When the sun sets at harvest time, it disappears behind that mound there. He indicates another earthwork on the western side of the settlement. So they're like a calendar, you ask, beginning to understand. They mark time, yes, but they do more. They connect the patterns of the sky with the patterns of the earth. They remind us that what happens above also happens below. They focus the energies that allow our crops to grow, our children to thrive, our community to remain in balance. This explanation reveals a sophisticated understanding of astronomical alignments similar to those found in ancient structures around the world, from Stonehenge to the pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica. These people aren't simply piling earth to create impressive monuments. They're constructing carefully engineered structures that serve as astronomical observation tools and physical manifestations of their cosmological beliefs. How do you know where to place them to align with the sun and stars, you ask, curious about their methods without modern surveying equipment? Ahanu smiles slightly. We watch, season after season, year after year. Our grandfathers watched and their grandfathers before them. The sky tells its stories to those patient enough to listen. He explains how certain elders are dedicated sky watchers, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, planets and stars throughout the year. They use simple tools, sticks placed vertically to cast shadows, stones arranged to mark where celestial bodies rise and set, natural landmarks that frame significant astronomical events. The patterns repeat, Ahanu says, but never exactly the same. Sometimes the moon wanders from its usual path, sometimes stars disappear and new ones appear. We watch, we remember, we learn. You realize he's describing comets, supernovas, and other astronomical phenomena that occur irregularly. Without light pollution or telescopes, these ancient sky watchers would have had a clearer view of the night sky than most modern people ever experience. And the knowledge is passed down through, you prompt. Stories, songs, ceremonies, Ahanu replies. Special patterns woven into baskets and painted on pottery, arrangements of posts and stones that mark important alignments. The most sacred knowledge is entrusted to those chosen for the path of sky watching, taught through years of apprenticeship. As you talk, the celebration continues around you. You notice that despite the festive atmosphere, certain protocols remain in place. Elders are served first, specific individuals lead particular activities, and there appears to be an underlying order to what might seem like spontaneous enjoyment. The ceremony today, you say, returning to your original curiosity, it's about more than just giving thanks for corn, isn't it? Ahanu nods, his expression becoming more serious. The green corn ceremony is a time of renewal. Old quarrels are forgiven, mistakes acknowledged and set aside. It marks the beginning of a new cycle, a fresh start for the community. He explains that the ceremony includes elements you weren't able to observe: private rituals of purification, confession of wrongdoings, reaffirmation of social bonds and responsibilities. The public celebration is just one part of a complex process that serves to maintain both spiritual and social harmony. Without such renewal, communities sicken, Ahanu says. Disagreements fester, resentments grow, people forget their connections to each other and to the world that sustains them. The ceremony reminds us of what matters beyond our daily concerns. This perspective helps you understand why the ceremony feels so significant. It's not just a religious observance or a harvest festival, but a multifaceted event that serves psychological, social, and ecological functions all at once. As afternoon transitions to evening, the celebration continues with storytelling, music, and dance. Different from the formal ceremonial performances of the morning, these are more participatory, with community members taking turns sharing tales or leading songs. You notice that many of these stories involve explanations of natural phenomena, why certain plants grow where they do, how particular animals got their distinctive features, what causes weather patterns to change. Embedded within entertaining narratives are practical information about the environment, moral lessons about proper behavior, and reinforcement of cultural values. Our stories are not just for pleasure, Kichi explains when he joins you later. They teach us how to live in right relationship with the world around us. They remind us of the consequences when that relationship is broken. He points to a storyteller currently holding the community's attention with a tale about a hunter who took more than he needed and faced supernatural punishment as a result. That story teaches respect for the animals that give their lives so we may eat. It reminds us that greed brings suffering, while restraint brings balance. As darkness falls, the central fire is built higher, casting flickering light across the plaza and the surrounding mounds. The night is clear, revealing a spectacular canopy of stars overhead. Without modern light pollution, the sky is ablaze with more stars than you've ever seen, the Milky Way, a brilliant river of light stretching from horizon to horizon. Several elders, including a Hanu, gather a small group of older children and begin pointing out specific stars and constellations. You edge closer, listening as they share the names and stories associated with these celestial landmarks. Their constellations are different from the ones you know, reflecting their own cultural perspectives rather than the Greek and Roman mythology that shaped Western astronomy. Where you might see Orion the hunter, they see a pattern representing an ancestral hero. The Pleiades star cluster, which modern astronomers identify as a group of hot blue stars, is to them a family of sisters with their own complex narrative. Yet despite these cultural differences, you're struck by the accuracy of their observations. They've noted the regular movements of the planets, the shifting positions of stars through the seasons, the cyclical patterns of the moon's phases. Without telescopes or written records, they've built a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics through generations of careful observation. The sky above and the earth below mirror each other, Ahanu tells his young listeners, his voice carrying to where you stand. What happens in one affects the other. By understanding the patterns of the stars, we better understand our own place in the great circle of creation. Later, as the celebration begins to wind down and families drift back to their dwellings, you find yourself once again sitting with Kitchi and Talisa near the dying embers of a small fire. The children have already fallen asleep, worn out by the day's excitement. "Did you understand the ceremony?" Talisa asks, her expression curious in the fading firelight. "Parts of it," you admit, "but I think there were layers of meaning I couldn't grasp." Kitchi nods, unsurprised. "Some understandings come only with time and belonging," he says. "Each green corn ceremony teaches you something new, even if you have seen 80 summers." This comment triggers a question that's been forming in your mind throughout the day. "How do your people think about time?" you ask. "Is it a straight line moving forward or something else?" The question seems to please them, as if you finally asked something that matters deeply. They exchange a glance before Kitchi answers. "Time is a circle," he says, drawing a ring in the dirt beside the fire. "Not a perfect circle that simply repeats, but a spiral that returns to similar places while always moving." He traces a spiral outward from the initial circle. "Each season comes again, but never exactly as before. Each generation learns from the past, but faces new challenges. The circles of sun and moon guide our days and nights, our months and years, but the greater circles of stars show longer patterns that our individual lives may not complete." This cyclical perspective on time contrasts with the linear view that dominates modern thinking. You wonder how it shapes their approach to life, perhaps encouraging a longer-term vision, a deeper sense of connection to both ancestors and descendants, a recognition of patterns that modern society might miss in its constant push for progress and novelty. "Tomorrow, life returns to its usual rhythms," Talisa says, reading the tiredness in your face, "but we carry the renewal of the ceremony with us in our work. Sleep comes easily that night, your mind full of images from the day, the ceremonial fire, the chief priest's painted face, the distribution of sacred corn, the elders pointing out stars to attentive children. These fragments weave together in your dreams with everything else you've experienced in this ancient American world." You dream of corn growing tall under the summer sun, of bison moving across fire-renewed prairies, of canoes carrying goods along river highways, of forests managed with careful burning, of mounds aligned with solstices and equinoxes. In your dream, these elements aren't separate activities, but parts of an integrated whole, a way of life that connects people to each other and to the natural world that sustains them. When you wake the next morning, something feels different. The physical sensations are the same. The firmness of the sleeping mat beneath you, the cool morning air, the distant sounds of the settlement coming to life. But your perception has shifted somehow. You've been viewing this ancient world through modern eyes, noting what these people lack compared to your time. No metal tools, no wheels, no writing system, no domesticated animals beyond dogs. But now you see more clearly what they possess: a deep understanding of their environment, sophisticated networks of trade and communication, complex social structures, rich cultural traditions, and a spirituality that integrates daily life with larger patterns of existence. As you rise and prepare for the day, you carry this new perspective with you. Joining Kitchi for the morning meal, you notice details you might have missed before: the careful craftsmanship of the wooden bowls, the precise knowledge of plant properties reflected in the food preparation, the subtle social cues in how family members interact. The settlement returns to its normal activities, but with the refreshed energy that follows the ceremony. Fields need tending, hunting parties must be organised, hides require processing, children need teaching. Yet underneath these practical tasks, you now sense the spiritual framework that gives them meaning, the understanding that each action connects to both community and cosmos. You spend the day helping with various tasks, moving between different work groups as you have throughout your time here, but now you ask different questions, seeking to understand not just how things are done, but why, the beliefs and values that guide choices about resource use, social organisation, and relationship with the environment. By evening, as you help prepare the communal meal, you find yourself reflecting on what modern society might learn from these ancient Americans. Not a romanticized view that ignores the hardships and limitations of their lives, but an honest assessment of the wisdom embedded in their relationship with the world around them. They understood ecological connections long before the science of ecology was formalized. They developed sustainable practices for managing resources, recognizing that their survival depended on maintaining the health of the systems that supported them. They created social structures that balanced individual needs with community welfare. They acknowledged the importance of both practical knowledge and spiritual meaning in creating a fulfilling human life. As darkness falls and the community gathers around evening fires, you find yourself experiencing a moment of clarity. The past and future seem to compress, allowing you to see this ancient world not as primitive or simple, but as a different and valid way of being human. With its own sophistication, its own technologies appropriate to its context, its own answers to the fundamental questions all societies must address. Sitting beside Kitchi and Talisa as they teach their children a song about the changing seasons, you realise that these people aren't just survivors in a harsh world waiting for civilization to arrive from Europe. They are civilization, a fully developed culture with its own achievements, values, and contributions to human history. The stars emerge overhead, the same stars that guided these ancient astronomers in building their mounds, planting their crops, and navigating their world. The same stars that will still shine long after both their civilization and yours have passed into history. In their patient light, the artificial separation between past and present seems to dissolve, revealing the continuous thread of human experience across time. As the evening deepens and conversation gives way to quiet contemplation, you find yourself filled with gratitude for this journey into ancient America, not just for what you've learned about how people lived 1,000 years ago, but for what it's taught you about different ways of understanding what it means to be human in relationship with each other and with the earth. Sleep approaches once more, and as you settle onto your familiar sleeping mat, you carry with you a sense of connection that spans centuries. The challenges facing humanity have evolved, but the fundamental needs remain: for sustenance, for community, for meaning, for balance with the natural world. The lessons of ancient America whisper through your consciousness as you drift toward dreams, reminders of wisdom earned through generations of living close to the earth, wisdom partially forgotten in the rush of technological progress, but perhaps more relevant now than ever before. In these final moments of wakefulness, surrounded by the gentle sounds of a sleeping settlement beneath the vast star-filled sky, you understand that the story of ancient America isn't just about the past. It's about possibilities for human societies in any time. Possibilities for living with awareness of our place in the intricate web of life that sustains us all. The ancient and modern worlds touch across time in your drifting thoughts, each with lessons for the other, each part of the great spiral of human experience that continuously returns to similar questions while facing new challenges. And in this understanding, you find both peace and purpose as sleep finally claims you beneath the ancient American sky. The people you've come to know, Kitchi and Talisa, Ahanu and Wachui and all the others, will continue their lives in this place, tending their corn, hunting their bison, trading their goods, telling their stories, watching their stars. Their civilization will face challenges in the centuries to come, challenges, from history books, but they cannot foresee. Yet the wisdom they've developed through their intimate relationship with this land will endure in countless ways, influencing the continent's future even beyond the massive disruptions that await. As your consciousness fades into dreams, one final thought surfaces: that perhaps the greatest lesson of ancient America is the reminder that human ingenuity, adaptation, and meaning-making happen in all times and places, not just in the narrow slice of history and geography we typically celebrate. And in that recognition lies the seed of a more complete understanding of our shared human journey across time. Sleep now, cradled in the knowledge of ancient America, carrying its stories back with you wherever and whenever you go next. For in the end, all human stories are connected in the great web of existence, past flowing into present, present into future, in an endless cycle of renewal and remembrance.